Hi, welcome to the Addiction Recovery Place, the podcast champion addiction treatment specialists around the world. I'm very pleased to introduce today's guest, Mark Moody. Mark is the Chief Executive at Change Go Live, a national charity based over in the United Kingdom. Change Go Live has grown from a tiny volunteer-led organisation back in 1977, offering accommodation, support to people leaving prisons, to a national charity helping tens of thousands of people change the directions of their lives, grow as a person and live life to its full potential. Change Go Live supports people who are using drugs, alcohol and smoking, and they help people with housing and employment. Welcome to Addiction Recovery Place podcast, Mark. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me.
No, I really appreciate your time. I know you're incredibly busy, so we'll get started with a pretty straightforward question. So tell us about your career working in addiction treatment services in the UK and how you became CEO of Change Go Live.
So I was doing a completely. I went to university kind of late, tried to become a rock star, didn't really work out. Moved down to London, was working in media, I suppose, as it was at that time. Really hated it. Volunteered in a needle exchange at the weekend because I felt like I wanted to do something like that. I came from a town that was fairly blighted by heroin in the sort of 80s and 90s. Loved doing that. Volunteered for a couple of years. Got a job somewhere else. Pitched up at Change Go Live as a frontline worker. It was under a different name at the time, but I pitched up in September the 9th, 2000. Employee number 86, I think. So my payroll number's 86. And, there was a frontline worker for a while, then there was a team leader for a while, then there was a project manager for a while, then there was a service manager, then there was an area manager, deputy director, an executive director, head of operations, chief executive. That took about 24 years. And I failed a lot more interviews than I passed, by the way. People always forget about the disappointment. So, just did one job as well as I could, then got the next job, and and here we are.
Wow! So you've really rose through the ranks, and now you're CEO of a big national charity. I mean, you've got a lot of experience within being a CEO. Obviously, with I used to work for one of Mark's charities in London when I had the privilege of working there. So yeah, that's quite a long history there, Mark. So your charity Change Grow Live supports many people who experience an addiction to drugs and alcohol, as well as many other problems. Tell us about some of the services and the geographical areas where your teams are located in your services.
Okay, so I mean, really north from the very south of England right up into to Scotland these days. I'm Scottish. It might not be obvious to Americans. I don't know. But I'm British. But for a long time we were just in England. We did some work in Wales for a little bit of stuff in Scotland. A lot of what you do, as we say, is drug and alcohol support services, the full range of things from kind of psychosocial, including psychiatry and psychologists and counselling and all that kind of stuff. And the medical side of things with substitute prescribing. Alongside that, we do work in prisons again, often around drugs and alcohol. Some of it around just people reintegrating into society. Do quite a lot, bit of work on domestic violence, although proportionally not as much as when you worked for us. Do some work to get people back into employment. Do quite a lot of homelessness work as well. So it's not really a single issue charity, but I think all of the harms that we try to do something about are connected and probably clustered around drugs and alcohol, homelessness, involvement in the criminal justice system, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So the real the real core work that needs to be done, obviously. So it's very, very wide ranging.
Yeah, we've got about 5,500 people working for us these days, and you had about 2,000 volunteers provide services to maybe 150,000 people out of formal services to 150,000.
150,000 clients on you're taking care of. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. In the United Kingdom, when I was working there, the main drugs of choice, Mark, were heroin and crack cocaine. Have you seen any shifts in the prevalent drugs of choice at all? Have you seen any changes at all over the last, I don't know, 10 years?
Well, we have. I mean, for a long time, heroin and crack to a slightly lesser, but still, particularly in the south of the country, a very substantial extent were the big things.
Mm.
In the last few years, a huge growth in powder cocaine, which has got purer and cheaper. And so we're seeing that right across the country, including in places like Scotland, where you really just didn't see it at all back in the day.
Mhm.
And while we've had some instances of things like fentanyl appearing, it's tended to be mixed in with what was being sold as heroin, rather than people knowingly buying fentanyl with predictably tragic circumstances.
Very much so. Yeah.
Sometimes fentanyl's never really taken off in a huge way over here, and nor has methamphetamine, which we see very little of. But actually, the thing that's worrying us now is a new class of drugs called nitazenes, which again are a synthetic opioid drug, yet more dangerous than fentanyl, if such a thing is possible. And with the reduction of poppy production in Afghanistan and the reduction in the availability of natural heroin, for want of a better word, we do fear that that's something that coming to us that may give us a similar experience to that's happened in the States.
Oh, very, very much so. Yeah, we're definitely seeing a shift in drug use. With fentanyl being so prolific. I mean, we're
Yeah.
finding it's not just found in opioids, but in cocaine. And even I interviewed someone the other day that said that it's even in cannabis.
Indeed, it can crop up in all kinds of places. Also in the UK, I think the availability of all kinds of what we would call bathtub chemicals on the internet, which are, it's a pill, it says it's something, it's not necessarily that, but particular things that either are or are claiming to be benzodiazepines, so things like diazepam, diazepam, that kind of stuff, downers basically. In parts of the country, very common, and often with drug-related deaths, you got a cocktail of these things involved.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. I mean, are you able to test for these new substances? Are you finding your tests are keeping up with this?
Keeping up with, good.
Yeah.
I think we're catching up
Good.
with them. So things appear, you find out it's there, you find the way to test for it, you try and provide all the testing that you can. I don't think testings anywhere, not just change we live, but anywhere in the country, I think testings at the levels that we would want it to be. I think there's some trust issues for people. I mean, we're talking about illegal drugs, so
very much so.
People trusting you to help them test the drugs and stay safe is a thing too. But we're certainly doing our level best to try and keep people safe, because I mean, for lots of people, stopping using drugs is the ultimate goal. For me, you only get to make a choice like that if you're not dead. So that's kind of goal number one for us. And beyond that, it's the way the person's going to take their own life. Making sure they retain that choice is the thing.
It must be quite a shock if you're able to test for fentanyl and then you're telling the person they've tested positive for fentanyl, and then they're like, what am I using here? I mean, it could be a real it could be quite a shock to someone that they put their life literally at a much bigger risk than. I'm not trying to downplay heroin use at all, but I'm saying this is another league of drugs that we're talking about here.
I think the thing, perhaps when people are buying fentanyl and they know what it is, they're treating it with respect is the word I want to use, but it's the right word, but it's the word I've got. But when you're buying like things heroin or any of those other things that you mentioned, you're fentanyl in it, and particularly if it's been improperly cut, so that there's hotspots within the mix. So one hit of it is heroin and another has enough fentanyl to kill you. The risk management of such a thing is it's really difficult. And if you're not expecting at all, it's very near impossible. Yeah.
Mm. I remember when I was working over there, Mark, there was the anthrax scare as well, around about 2005, 6. And I don't think they experienced that over here. So when I'm speaking to people about the anthrax thing, and they're like,
No, like I mean, with a few tragedies, it wasn't it didn't turn into the huge catastrophe that we
thankfully.
thought we thought it was going to. But drug contamination is a very real risk when things are in the hands of criminals. Anything's happened, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Change Grow Lives. So you work in the criminal justice system. So is my background was working in the drugs intervention program. I mean, is that still active? Are you still working in police cells and the carrot teams and still in prisons?
We've got different names for things. We do substantially all the same things. I think it was the drug intervention program in it, the criminal justice intervention teams, a carrot worker. I can't remember quite what it stood for, but we still have people working in prisons. We still have people going into police stations. Actually, my first job working for Change Go Live was going into police stations and talking to people and trying to get to the root of their offending behaviour, which was all often because they were trying to get money for drugs. So we still do all that stuff. I think the difference from when I started is that the level of service that there is to plug people into, how quickly they can get that service, is rather better than it was 24 years ago, although it peaks and troughs depending on the funding that's available to do things. I think if someone's been working in the field for 10 years, they probably think things have got tougher. If you've been working in it for 30 years, you probably things have got better. But there's never enough help, really. The problem is always larger than the resources available to provide a solution, and that's quite a tough thing.
Yeah, I found it incredibly rewarding working in the police. As I really did. It was quite a privilege to do that work.
Yeah,
In
what
the
horrible job than being a chief executive on a day-to-day basis. You get to see people, you get to meet people,
Yeah.
them getting well and turning their lives around, and that's really rewarding. I try to meet as many people who use their services as possible, just to remind me that all the fairly boring stuff that I have to do actually has a point to it, you know?
Yeah, I remember very well, Mark. So, in the United States, there are different rules and laws for providing medication as a treatment, such as methadone and Suboxone, especially state by state. I'm finding it very different stories about how people can access medication as a treatment. Can you tell us what prescription services Change Grow Live has available, and what's the process to access them, and how long does it take someone to receive a script on average?
Okay, so I suppose one of the big differences between the UK and the States is that the kind of principle of the National Health Service, where treatment's free at the point of need. And although we are not an NHS organisation in itself, we do deliver within that framework. So all of our services are free, and are ultimately the vast majority of them paid for with government money. There's a full range of prescribing available. So there's a fair bit of methadone, and buprenorphine is the other big option. We don't probably use as much of the because I can't remember the name for it. You can tell that we don't use as much of it. The buprenorphine with the blocker
Oh yes,
alongside it. It is there. There's also in recent times some injectable forms of buprenorphine that are used, which are long acting for people who are less able to come in regularly or pick up at pharmacies. We are working towards same-day prescribing for everybody that comes into our services. So you turn up, you get assessed, you get prescribed. I think we're up to nearly 50% of people that come into Change Grow Live get same days of prescribing. It's a massive focus for us to shorten the amount of time that it takes for people to get a prescription as quickly as possible. I think historically there was an idea that you needed to demonstrate your motivation to change to be provided with a prescription. We feel that if you say, I'm in a bit of trouble and I need some help, you're motivated. And the difference, I guess, from your and my days in the restaurant is, right, I'm going to help you, but it's going to take about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that 6 weeks, we lost a lot of people. So
Yes.
I think when people reach out for help, trying to get them help as quickly as we possibly can is a major focus for us.
I mean, the fact you've got someone there coming to your service, that shows enough to say they want help.
Good enough for me. It's good enough for me. And I think one of the other things, and I don't know how this works in the States, but we will have people that we prescribe to who will use illegal drugs on top. In the UK, the standards are that tends to suggest that the prescription needs to be increased rather than reduced or stopped. So where we do that rather carefully, that would tend to be our approach. We don't want to take a punitive approach. People may have lived a particular lifestyle for quite a long length of time. And you don't expect people to have to turn that around immediately. So having some consideration for that, I think, is also really important.
Definitely. Over here in the United States, addiction services are set up very differently from the UK model. Can you explain TUPE and the service bidding process that organisations have to go through? Because
it's a funny thing. As I say, it works within the kind of framework of NHS services, but different services, including the NHS itself, the National Health Service as an organisation, various different charities, and indeed the private sector can bid for contracts to deliver a service in a particular area, and you will be judged on what you say you can do with the available money. And should you win one of those contracts, something that Change Your Lives been pretty good at, you inherit the staff of the previous organisation. TUPE stands for the oh my goodness, this is terrible. Transfer of undertakings, protection of employment.
yes,
Which means that basically your job on the term that you were employed is protected up to a point.
Mhm.
If there's less money available to deliver the service than there was previously, it can lead to people losing their jobs. Again, that means that they will be paid the redundancy money on the terms of their previous employer. I think most of the people who work in this sector, regardless of who they work for, have entered the sector with good intention.
completely.
The cultures that develop in different places that deliver services in different ways are quite different. So it can take a little while for a new service that's got a new provider that might have slightly different policies, procedures, even ethos, to buy into that and deliver something with the level of consistency. So that's the downside, is there can be a bit of disruption, and over the last few years we've seen the length of these contracts get longer, and actually right now there are changes where the recommissioning of services, rather than happening every 3 years, it used to be every 5 years, it is now, is likely to only take place if it's felt that the services is underperforming, which I think everyone thinks is a good change. But the fact that you don't just get the contract and keep it forever unless you do a decent job does keep organisations honest. I think, when you know that if you don't do a great job, you'll get it taken away from you. I don't like to think that we need that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do a good job because I want to do a good job.
I know that.
Nobody's coming to this line of work to get rich, I don't think. But not in the UK anyway. But I think having, it's public money that's being spent, having some accountability to ensure that you're spending that money as well as you can, I think is probably been something that's driven the improvements in drug and alcohol services in particular over the last 20 or so years.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you very much for explaining that to me. That's great, Mark. So your 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 organisation's involvement in assisting families affected by domestic violence is very much needed. When did the organisation start focusing on this in the community, and did you observe a surge in demand in these services, especially during the COVID-19 lockdowns or post that?
As I say, our relative involvement in delivery of domestic violence services compared to when you worked with us, Chris, is probably less. The organisation has grown enormously, and
Yes.
the number of services that are dedicated to domestic violence services that we run is actually very small.
Okay.
We tended to think that working in partnership with other organisations where that's a particular specialism has been a better way to take that forward. So an example would be an organisation like Women's Aid. Not to say that it's only women that suffer from domestic violence, but predominantly that is what we come across during the COVID experience. We did notice that there was a surge in domestic violence. People, I suppose cabin fever is kind of an American term, isn't it? And I think where relationships were bad, where there were pre-existing problems and people were stuck with each other and couldn't get away from each other for months on end at times, these kind of things can tend to come to a head. So yes, we did see that there was more of this kind of thing happening, and obviously the delivery of all of our services during the pandemic was tremendously difficult. So yeah, it's an area where I think as we've grown, we've realised that to provide a uniform standard of service, we are better to partner with people of the same kind of national footprint as we do, doing that as we do doing the drug and alcohol stuff. So a wee bit more partnership stuff, although we do still have some dedicated delivery, which is high quality stuff. But increasingly, we're bearing down on more drugs, alcohol, homelessness, and
Yes.
work in the criminal justice environment. People who suffer from those.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that to me, Mark. I just wanted to touch base on that. So, what are the future plans for Change Grow Live with service deliverability? And what are the new services you're about to provide to communities in the UK? Have you got any plans for what's kind of?
Well, do you know what? For me, it's always about being as good as you possibly can be. And I think that the desire to be as good as we possibly could be was the thing that drove the growth of the organisation, rather than a desire necessarily to grow a great big thing. If I were to have a choice between being fabulous but smaller, or huge but a bit average or worse, I'd pick fabulous but smaller. So I think our biggest focus is to make sure that the limited resources that are available are spent in the best possible way, make the services we've got as good as we possibly can.
Of course.
We end up delivering more services in more places and helping more people. That's great, but it's got to be a side effect of focusing on excellence and delivering, with compassion to people who are having a really, really hard time. I think sometimes for a lot of people who enter our services, it's maybe the only, I'm going to say the only service that treats them with a degree of humanity. Sometimes it might be the only people that pursue them with a degree of humanity. So I think getting right what we've got is more important to me than launching anything new or fancy. We're continually trying to make sure that we respond to the changes. So things like testing strips and all that kind of stuff, responding to drug harms, making sure that we get a balance between harm reduction and recovery or whatever. Right. But yeah, generally, if you do a really good job, the organisation may grow by happenstance. But I think you've got to get that it's a charity. It's not a business. It's a charity that's business-like, because we need to spend every pound to its greatest effect. But a charity first and business-like second, not a business that happens to be a charity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Greatly.
Last couple of questions, Mark. So where can people find you online?
www.changegrowlive.org. It might be cgl.org. You know what? It's amazing. It's spelling my own phone number. I don't know what that is either. No, I do know what my phone number. I don't know what my phone number is. I do know my mobile phone number because I've had the same mobile phone number for the last 24 years. But if you put Change Grow Live into the website, it should come up. It should come up pretty swiftly. We will be revamping our website this year, actually, because we were kind of busy over the whole pandemic experience, and then clear up after that. And technology moves on. You can find what you want there, but it could use a wee bit of a spring clean, I think, to come up to standard. Yeah, but if you need us in the UK, and if you get a hold of us and it happens that it's not us that delivers services in the area where you live, we will try and connect you to the people that do, because do you know, I worked for this organisation a long time. It's really important to me, but it's not as important to me as making sure that people get the services they require, whoever it is that delivers us.
Perfect. So, last question, Mark. Have I missed anything at all that you'd like to mention to our audience?
Do you know, I don't know, because I don't know your audience. What I would say, if any of your audience are interested in any of this, I do know my own email address is mark.moody@cgl.org.uk. I know that.
Perfect.
If you get any questions they would like to have asked me, I'd be very happy for people to contact me. I'm fascinated by the differences between the two countries, all sorts of differences between the two countries. And I just think, maybe the fentanyl, I don't know if this for the fentanyl crisis or the opioid crisis in the States has had this effect, but I think one of the things I'd hope might have happened is that a lot of people who wouldn't have been thought of as stereotypical drug users got drawn into a way of life that possibly wouldn't previously have been by the overprescribing of opioid medications and so forth. And I think that demonstrates that these things can happen to just about anybody. And once you realise that these things can happen to just about anybody, I'd hope that the compassion that we have for the people that we meet that might have these problems could go up just a wee tick. I'm not a religious person, but I do like the phrase, there but for the grace of God, go I, because I think there's a huge amount of truth in it. Life's a series of circumstances and dumb luck or dumb mischance. So I think I'd just like to say that's kind of what I'm looking for from people, is to just think about the folk that are suffering through these things as human beings who are people's kids, maybe people's parents, their brothers and sisters. Happened to a whole lot of people that were, they weren't deserving of the way their lives turned out.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I couldn't have thought of a better way to end this interview today. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
It's me again.
Yeah, it was obviously it was a real privilege to work with you before back in the UK, and I'm really glad we had this conversation today. And thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it.
I do hope your viewers can understand my accent. I've been trying tremendously hard to speak English rather than how I normally sound.
I have the same issue too. I'm not Scottish, but I still have the same issue myself. So I got called old English the other day. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you, Mark.